Guaranteed to be less awkward than a Benedict Cumberbatch interview. Welcome to Dre TV.
Welcome to you all at home.
You've still got a chance to win this race, haven't you?
Just try. I wanna be the only one to make it through life.
Hey guys, Harrison I'm back at it once again with a brand new episode 4, that's 3 fingers, 4, of Dre TV here on the Harrison 101 HD YouTube channel, featuring all the latest news, reviews and previews, and all other kinds of funky stuff, featuring Formula 1 and MotoGP here on this channel. It is the most loaded episode we have to date of Dre TV on here. It's going to be absolutely huge. We have a full race review of the Malaysian Grand Prix in Formula 1, as well as an updated look at the power rankings. We have a look at the Castrol GP race predictor. There is another Ask Dre segment, as well as a feature on team orders, given the recent Felipe Massa Valtteri Bottas controversy at the end of that Grand Prix. More on that later. And full previews as well for Formula 1's doubleheader this weekend in Bahrain, and MotoGP's second round at the Circuit of the Americas. Got all that? Good. Let's get cracking. So let's first take a look at the review and the power rankings for the Malaysian Grand Prix. So the Formula 1 season took its second stop on the calendar in Sepang, and it was Lewis Hamilton becoming the greatest British qualifier in the history of the sport with his 33rd pole position in a rain-affected session, with Sebastian Vettel stunning everyone by qualifying in second, with Nico Rosberg and Fernando Alonso on the second row. The race, sadly, however, ended up as dry as a bone, and Lewis Hamilton kept the lead through lap 1, with Rosberg jumping through Vettel into second, and to the giggling surprise of a lot of people, Daniel Ricciardo leapfrogged his own teammate into third for the moment. Danny gave Vettel the place back a couple of laps later out of team orders. More on that later. Kevin Magnussen had a bit of a reality check during this race, having hit the side of Kimi Raikkonen's Ferrari, causing him a puncture and a very early stop that effectively ruined his race. Raikkonen limped back to finish home in 12th, with Kevin Magnussen given a stop-go penalty for his collision. Jules Bianchi was also punished for a first-lap clash with Pastor Maldonado. Stop me if you've heard that one before. The front of the field was pretty quiet throughout the majority of the race. Lewis Hamilton dominated from start to finish and led nearly every single racing lap. Rosberg was second, with Sebastian Vettel desperately giving chase in third, with Daniel Ricciardo and Fernando Alonso fourth and fifth. The Hipster of the Day award went to Force India's Nico Hülkenberg, the only front runner to be on a two-stop strategy. He was on track for a sensational 4th place, but narrowly beaten down into 5th by Fernando Alonso at the end. Old Nando must be getting really tired of seeing Nico in front of him. Sadly at the front too, the curse of the Australian in a Red Bull seemed to continue, with Daniel Ricciardo suffering a pit stop error on his penultimate stint, the mechanic failing to attach his front left tyre properly. As a result, the team had to wheel him back in and reattach it, costing Daniel a lap in the process. But it got worse as the front jack had damaged his front wing, which broke on Danny's outlap. He was forced to retire a lap later. To rub salt in an already dismembered wound, Daniel was also given a 10-place grid drop for this weekend's Grand Prix in Bahrain for the team's unsafe release. A stronger penalty than before as a result of the injured cameraman from last year's German GP. Somehow, though, Daniel is still smiling. What a guy. Also, bad news for Sauber fans of a double retirement. Esteban Gutierrez of a gearbox fault and Adrian Sutil parking his car on the front straight with an electrical failure. There was more drama at the end, with Felipe Massa getting a familiar message from his race engineer. Valtteri is faster than you. Only this time, Felipe refused to yield, arguably robbing Bottas of a chance of overtaking 6th-placed Jenson Button in front of him. Right or wrong, you be the judge. More on that later as well. The points earned, though, did keep them a point ahead of Force India in the Constructors' Championship. Sadly for them, Sergio Perez being unable to take advantage of his grid slot due to more gearbox issues. But it was Lewis Hamilton who dominated the weekend from start to finish, with pole, the win, and the fastest lap treble for his 23rd career win. Rosberg coming home in second, meaning the first 1-2 finish in both cars on the podium for Mercedes since 1955. Sebastian Vettel closing off the podium in third place for Red Bull. And in a neat surprise, Khan and Sherlock Holmes himself, Benedict Cumberbatch, was on hand with the podium interviews. He's so cool. Anywho, further down, Kevin Magnussen recovered to finish 9th, despite finishing a lap down, and Daniel Fiat finished in 10th for his second consecutive points finish for Toro Rosso. Somehow, Romain Grosjean finished in 11th place for Lotus, a superb result given their issues so far this season, and I think Caterham will be very happy with both of their cars finishing in 13th and 14th place. So what did I make of Malaysia? Well, sadly it was a bit of a boring affair really. The field was pretty spread out for the majority of the race, and it was the most interesting parts of the Grand Prix unfortunately involved shenanigans and team orders. The new rules were designed to encourage closer racing, but so far they've done pretty much the opposite, besides a couple of really nice passes from Felipe Massa and Fernando Alonso and Hulkenberg towards the end. I score Malaysia a 4 out of 10, worse than Australia. I think some of the gloss on the new season is already starting to fade, especially with another dominant team up the front, exactly what a large chunk of fans didn't want to see going on. Let's hope for a more dramatic affair in Bahrain this weekend. So as you can imagine, this had quite the impact on the power rankings. Let's take a look at the major changes coming up next. Okay, so with Malaysia in the books, here's the big movers and shakers this week. First up, Red Bull up 3 places from 5th to 2nd after validating Daniel Ricciardo's solid drive in Australia, with Vettel's podium and what would have been a 4th to 5th at worst for Daniel Ricciardo if it weren't for the mess up in the pits. No doubt, Red Bull have closed the gap huge since testing on the rest of the field, but will it continue? I also had 2 major issues when compiling the latest rankings. Where to put Williams and Ferrari was one of them. I kept Ferrari at 4 for Fernando's really solid 4th place finish in Malaysia, just ahead of Williams who now moved down to 5th. Williams have shown to me so far that while they may be mechanically sound, they just don't have the overall pace yet to really contend for podiums, something a lot of people thought they could actually compete for, especially after Bottas' strong showing in Australia. Still very early days though, so don't put too much stock into that. The other close one was Force India and Toro Rosso. I thought Nico Hulkenberg's 5th place was enough for me to put Force India back ahead of Toro Rosso for the number 6 spot. Force India proved that they're still very good on their tyres, and despite Perez not making the start, Verne didn't make the end either, and there seems to be a bit of a gap between Nico and Daniil in terms of ability. But at the top, it's still Mercedes. No surprises here. The 2 Mercs are clearly still around half a second a lap quicker than anything else on track, with Hamilton finishing 24 seconds ahead of next nearest non-Mercs runner, Sebastian Vettel in 3rd. Here's the full list, let me know what you think in the comments. Got any thoughts on the Grand Prix, all the power rankings? Let me know in the comments below. Hope you guys enjoyed that little segment. Like I said, it wasn't the most exciting race in the world, but it looks like it's finally starting to paint a little picture of just how the grid is shaping up. And by the time we get to Bahrain, I think we'll know for sure just the state of the field right now, because Australia and Malaysia are 2 circuits which require very different strengths. Bahrain's not going to be as bad as it was in previous years because of the fact it's going to be at night, so it's going to be a lot colder, which will help out a lot of the teams like Red Bull who have struggled with engine cooling over the testing and the season period so far. Anywho, let's have a look at the Castrol Race Predictor League situation, and we have a new leader in the Dre TV League. It is Joe McMillan, who scored a whopping 107 points in round 2 in Malaysia. He got the podium exactly right. Hamilton, Rosberg and Vettel, so he got the 40-point bonus for getting the race winner and the entire podium as well. He actually got the top 4 and Kevin Magnussen in 9th exactly right. Also got a bonus 5 for Button in 5th and Lewis Hamilton on pole. So he is now the new leader by 12 points at 174. knocking Aarava into second place with 162, and then Nino down to third with 133. In case you're wondering where I'm at, I dropped down quite big. I'm down to 18th now with 91 points. Shout out to Donna Marie Bailey, Peter Lawrenson, Bradley Halcrow, Archie King, Nick Bracci, Robert Savage, Serban Manea, Tom Bardsley, Vincent Parks, Danny Brennan, Edward Gooden, Mitchell Cavins, Andrew Hablin, and Alexei Korsman, all for being ahead of me right now. So, congratulations to you guys, you're all ahead. Remember, the top 3 at the end of the season will get a Harrison 101 t-shirt. They are coming out very soon. I'm working on them as we speak. And an overall winner will get a copy of F1 2014 on the console of their choice. Now, let's take a look at my little segment I did on team orders. Team orders. It's the really bad itch of Formula 1 that never quite goes away. Seems like we can't go a season without a major happening of this. Last year, it was Multi21, the code name heard around the world that still rings for internet memes on here a year later. This very action and the related aftertaste caused world champion Sebastian Vettel to be booed by fans for over half the season as a result of his actions, ignoring a team order to essentially let teammate Mark Webber win at Malaysia last year. This time, the major story was at the end of the race, and Felipe Massa ignoring an instruction from his team to let teammate Valtteri Bottas through in an attempt to give him a shot at passing Jenson Button just up ahead for 6th place. Felipe refused and eventually took 7th ahead of his teammate in 8th, despite Felipe not having the pace to pass Jenson ahead. Awkward. Just like the post-race interviews of Massa, Bottas and the deputy team principal and Williams' general mouthpiece Claire Williams, who seemed to brush the idea off. Again, awkward. Bottas seemed to take the professional high road on this one and refused to comment until after the team themselves had a chat about it. Whether this has any long-term effect on the team remains to be seen, but it certainly got people talking again. Was Massa right to ignore team orders? Was Bottas a hypocrite after he had too ignored a similar command earlier in the race? Is team orders right in general? My take? Well, the court of public opinion in Formula 1 is a very fickle thing. I know for a fact that many of the people who vilified Sebastian Vettel for Multi21 last year on social media praised Felipe Massa for a very similar gesture. Why? Simple. Because if there was one driver in Formula 1's recent history who could get away with ignoring team orders, it's Felipe Massa. The guy who's also been the biggest victim of team orders himself since becoming the team's number 2 to Fernando Alonso back in the Ferrari days of 2010 onwards. It cost him a win at the German Grand Prix that year. Often he's had to make way for old Nando on numerous occasions, even when he was legitimately faster, such as the Circuit of the Americas in 2012, where despite qualifying ahead, Ferrari broke the seal in his gearbox on purpose, forcing him to take a penalty to push Alonso up one place, making him start on the cleaner side of the track. As a result, Massa's always been a sympathetic figure in Formula 1, maybe going back as far as his 2008 World Championship failure and the massive head trauma he suffered in that spring incident in 2009. Like I said, the court of public opinion is definitely a fickle one, but it's fun to ponder why did he do it? Was it out of frustration? Did he think he could catch Button himself but failed? Was it a deep down resentment of not being the ultimate runner-up in Formula 1 anymore? A fresh start, so to speak? I've never been a fan of team orders, but I understand why they happen. Most Formula 1 fans only look at one side of the fence, and that's as a fan. And from a fan perspective, I understand your frustration. I'm a fan too, ultimately, and I hate the concept of a team effectively rigging a race in their favour. But from a business standpoint, and from the view of just general common sense, having teammates fight most of the time, pretty much all of the time, is pointless, and serves no benefit besides our own selfish lust for entertainment. Teams have got so much at stake, millions of pounds and points, that they almost have to protect themselves, especially in a sport where the driver is one of the few things they can't control. But I'd love to hear your stance. What do you make of team orders? Do they still belong in the sport in 2014? Do you agree with what Felipe Massa did? Let me know in the comments. If there's one thing I can guarantee about that segment, it's going to generate some comments, because I know you guys are just as opinionated when it comes to this kind of thing as I am. So, if you've got an opinion on team orders, or what you thought of Felipe Massa's actions during that Grand Prix, put it in the comments below. I'd love to hear your take as always. Right, time for Ask Dre. Okay, bit of clarification regarding Ask Dre. I'm only going to try and limit myself to maybe 5 questions per episode. So, if you've got one, tag it Ask Dre in the comments, but it's going to have to be really good, because I'm limited with time when it comes to these kind of things. I tend to ramble a lot, in case you haven't noticed already. So bear with me on that. But if your question is good enough, it will definitely make it in. You guys kind of got to be patient with me on this one. But thanks for your patience and for your understanding. I do really appreciate it. It means a lot. Right, first question. It's from Len. It's from Len M4 on Twitter. Thanks, Len. And the question was, is Lewis Hamilton overrated? All the hype, but has come 4th or 5th in the World Championship 5 times, and only 1 title to really prove his quality. Well, the reality of the situation is this. 1 World Championship is still a lot. Something only about 30 guys in this sport have actually won. So even having 1 World Championship will make you one of the best drivers of all time. Pretty much. Period. Is he overrated? Yes. No doubt about it. And it's not totally because of his ability. It's more to do with the fact that British media can't stop talking about him. Lewis Hamilton is basically arse-licked and brown-nosed by the entire British media. Sky Sports refer to him constantly as our Lewis, and his fans are all over the internet. They tend to be younger, and a lot of people love him, and to a lot of people he can do no wrong, which is just not true, and it's not the reality of the situation at all. That's just the unfortunate truth of the situation. Hamilton, in my opinion, is overrated, not because of his abilities. He's been one of the best drivers in Formula 1 for about 5 or 6 years now. The issue with him is that, 1, he's not consistent enough, and 2, the British media and his fan base, overhypes him to the nth degree. It's ridiculous. Okay, any other, let's see, more questions. Okay, the BPG13 asks another Hamilton question. Do you see Hamilton as a major championship contender like Vettel? Absolutely. He's in the best car this season. By default, he's the favourite now. The bookies have had him as favourite since day one. Mercedes have been the strongest car in testing and during the first 2 rounds of the season, without a doubt. So, I mean, it kind of goes without saying, really, that Hamilton is not only a contender, but most likely the favourite right now. I know he's 18 points behind Rosberg right now, or something like that, but he can easily pick that off over time. I mean, he's got a long way to go. I mean, Rosberg finishing 17 seconds behind Hamilton in Malaysia was definitely a bit of a wake-up call, and I think even Mercedes were puzzled as to why that happened. So, again, long way to go, but Hamilton smoked Rosberg in Malaysia, and I'd expect a lot of that to continue around certain tracks, because Hamilton is ridiculously good. We all know that. It was his 23rd race win, which is huge for his career. Alex Murray on Twitter asks, do you think an open class bike can win in MotoGP this season? It will take a big ask, in my opinion. I'll talk about this more in the MotoGP preview coming up at the end of the show. But in my humble opinion, what the open class seems to have done is that it's made qualifying a lot more wide open. Because, I mean, in qualifying there was 0.6 of a second covering all 12 of the runners in Q2. And, it was ridiculously close. You had guys that never normally contend for poles challenging, like Alice Espargaro and Andrea Dovizioso in the open class Ducati. So it seems to have made qualifying a lot closer. However, during the racing in Qatar, it's like the old tendency came back. It's like the old school came back in terms of the factory bikes were all on top and the open class were playing catch up. Because the front pack, a lot of it was pretty much Marquez, Rossi, Bautista, Pedrosa, and Bradley Smith. Bradley Smith being the only really new guy in that front pack, and they're all on factory bikes. So, I mean, it would take a big ask for an open class bike to win, but it's possible. Maybe that if they develop over the course of the season, they can catch up. Okay, Oscar Kozlova asks, sorry if I pronounce your name wrong, I do apologise. Oscar Kozlova, what do you think of the reaction to the engine sound? I think it is a little too early to judge. Give them a season or two and then they can be judged. Well, you told me what my opinion to the reaction was, and my opinion is people will stop giving a shit by the time we get to Bahrain and China anyway. I mean, the engine noise thing, I don't like it. It's not loud enough. It definitely takes some of the atmosphere away from a race. The onboard shots are okay. It just doesn't quite sound the same, and it's a bit disappointing. I mean, I know one of my best friends who watches the show, Stephanie, if you're watching, hi. She was live at the Australian Grand Prix, and even she told me it took some of the atmosphere out of the event, which is a bit of a shame, considering that's part of the big reason why you're down at a Formula 1 event in the first place. But I always think it's the kind of thing that people will just stop bitching about and will just accept in a couple of rounds' time anyway. And let's have a look here. Now, Nathaniel Sanica asks, do you think Mercedes will win both titles this year? It all comes down to how fast Red Bull can catch up. Mercedes, even Mercedes have admitted they know Red Bull is still the number one threat, and they still think they're behind them and think Red Bull will eventually catch up. I'd be inclined to agree with that opinion. The Renault engines have been dramatically behind the Mercedes engine powers cars for a little while now, but Renault are constantly getting better with their cars. And to me, I feel like Red Bull has the best chassis and the best designed car, but it's lacking in power because of the Renault engine situation, which is costing them big. I mean, during Malaysia, Red Bull were losing about 10 miles an hour in the straights. They were hitting about 290, 295 kilometers an hour, while the Mercedes-powered cars were hitting 315, 320. So that's a 10 to 15 mile an hour difference. That's costing you a couple of attempts, maybe half a second. When it started raining in qualifying, Sebastian Vettel nailed it and pretty much matched Mercedes pound for pound on one lap of a track. So it kind of shows you that it's not just the power that comes down to it when it comes to these events. Also, Red Bull's downforce and aerodynamics is what clearly helped them out in that situation too. It all comes down to me as to how fast Red Bull can catch up. If they can get to Canada maybe and Red Bull are close, maybe they can start winning some races and start reeling Mercedes back in. If it's too late, by the time they get to tracks like Hungary, Monza, Singapore, Merckx will probably clean up and double up. One more question. I'm going to go with Richard Evans on Facebook, who asks, with Bahrain just been a week away, do you think we will see more drivers finishing or retiring from the race? It is a night race as well. No, I actually think more cars will actually finish. I'll be honest, the reliability has been better than I thought it was going to be so far this season. I thought more cars would be dropping out of races and things like that. Surprisingly, it hasn't happened. It's actually been a little bit better than I expected. So maybe it's a positive sign for the future that more cars are finishing. I mean, there's still been a few here and there. But for the most part, they've been doing well. And Bahrain, I expect more of the same. Bahrain is going to be much colder because it's a night race rather than a race in the desert during midday, which is one of the hottest on the year. So overall, I would expect more cars to finish, especially the ones with engine issues, or ones that have engines that overheat quite quickly. That's how I see it anyway. But yeah, thank you for all your questions. If you didn't make it in, sorry about that. Leave a comment in the description, or whenever, just ask me on Facebook and use the hashtag AskDre, and I'll see if I can put it in an episode sometime. Right, as my mobile phone alarm goes off in the background, here are the previews for Bahrain and MotoGP. Well, the F1 train has its first back-to-back weekend as the circus heads to Bahrain for its first night race in its brief history at hosting Formula 1. It's going to be quite a different contrast for multiple reasons, not only for the scenery, but also the temperatures, which will be much rather reduced compared to the normal inferno-like desert conditions the teams would have been used to in the past. Even Merckx will have questions to answer going in, like why Nico Rosberg finished 17 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton in the same machinery. That's a puzzler, but they'll be still strong favourites for Bahrain, given their testing dominance there, and the fact they still have at least 4 tenths a lap on everyone else in the field, and that's taking Sebastian Vettel's ability to enhance the number 2 Red Bull into consideration. Will Red Bull be able to continue to close the gap? Their progress has been monstrous since day one, and they'd be very close to Merckx in the Constructors if it wasn't for Daniel Ricciardo's supremely bad luck so far this season, costing him around 30 points. And now he'll have even more work to do, because at absolute best, he'll be starting from P11. What about Ferrari? Are they playing catch-up yet again for the 5th straight year? Alonso's dragging that car as far as he can take it, but so far have failed to establish themselves right at the top without the benefit of others malfunctioning. And where has Kimi Raikkonen been so far this season? Is he really struggling that much with the brake-by-wire system? Can McLaren bounce back from a rather disappointing weekend in Malaysia, littered with engine issues, bad tactical decisions, and Kevin Magnussen coming back down to earth a little bit? K-Mag was lapped, and Button finished nearly a minute behind the Red Bulls they were on an equal footing to in Australia, is definitely concerning, especially considering Ron Dennis himself thought the team were going to gain half a second. Whoops. Will Williams right the ship after a lackluster Malaysia showing as well? Just how far can Hulkenberg drag that Force India? Can Lotus get some points after Grosjean's incredible 11th place given their recent issues? A lot of questions heading into Bahrain, and with this season still so young, maybe now we can finally start to see the state of the grid take some shape. Let me know what you think in the comments. As for the second half in this Dre TV doubleheader, MotoGP heads to the Circuit of the Americas for the second time in its history. Last year was a battle of the Repsol Hondas as Marc Marquez narrowly pipped Dani Pedrosa for his first ever top class victory, being the youngest rider to ever win at age 20. How long ago does that sound now, given his recent success? What I'm curious about going in is the class wars taking place in the top class right now between the factory runners, Movistar Yamaha, Repsol Honda, Tech 3, etc., against the open class, Ducati, Forward Racing, Pramac, Aspar, etc. The interesting observation with the battle so far is that the softer compound running open class bikes are blowing qualifying wide open. Qatar had 6 tenths of a second cover the entire top 12 in Q2, with unusual runners like Bautista, Smith and Espargaro in contention for pole and front row slots. However, when it came to the race, it was pretty much business as usual. The factory guys all at the front, with the open class bikes playing second fiddle, picking off the mistakes from the massive pack up front. Taking nothing away from Alex Espargaro's fourth a fortnight ago, but how many guys in front of him binned it? Maybe with the development of the ECUs, the open class will get closer to the over the race distance in time, but for now, the factory guys are still clearly on top. Marc Marquez is probably at the point now he's the favourite for any given race. He won in Qatar while at about 50% and will only get stronger as time goes on. Was Rossi second the flash in the pan, or were Yamaha this fast all along? We still have no idea on the form of the enigmatic one, Jorge Lorenzo, who still hasn't completed a racing lap in 2014. Will any other of the factory runners stick around? Stefan Bradl continues to take positive steps forward, and Alvaro Bautista looked as strong as he ever had before his fall. Was Bradley Smith's performance a sign of things to come as he tries to force Yamaha away from Golden Boy Pol Espargaro to get himself factory support? Again, a lot of questions, which makes the first of the 3 US Grand Prix this season all the more intriguing. Any more predictions? Why not leave them in the comments like you always do? Okay, if you've got any predictions for those 2 Grand Prix, put them in the comments below as always. Comments. I love comments. Just rack them up and see where it happens. But that pretty much wraps it up for this week's Dre TV. I had to put this entire video episode together in 2 days because I'm going to be out on holiday for a few days to rest up a little bit and, you know, take some time out, which is something I'm really going to enjoy and look forward to. In the meantime, I hope you guys have enjoyed the episode. I want to say a massive thank you. I didn't do this in the last episode, and I feel really terrible for not doing this, but a massive thank you to Aarava for all the video transitions you've seen during this episode. He did them all. and the logo, you may have noticed as well. He did a brilliant job with them. So massive thank you to Aarava for that. And a massive thank you to Ryan L83. He got me the gameplay of the modded Force India and Williams liveries. So I've got to say a massive thank you to Ryan L83 for that. And a huge thank you for everybody who watched episode 3 of Dre TV, the MotoGP special. Over 6,000 views. It's one of the most watched videos I've had on this channel for ages and ages. So thank you all so much for that. I'm really glad this show is taking off in leaps and bounds. I'm very proud of that. I've been Harrison101. I hope you guys have enjoyed the episode, and I'll catch you back next week for another episode of Dre TV. Thanks for watching, and sayonara.